You're listening to the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
Black 33!
Live at the studio of Worldwide Sports Radio.
All right, let's go.
It's the Third and Long Show. And here's your hosts, Matty Caps and KT Hepburn.
And welcome everybody to a brand new show of Third and Long here at the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. We are live here in Hauppauge, New York. You got myself, Mr. Matty Capsule, my co-host, producer, good friend, confidant, Conrad. He likes them all. Mr. Speedy Petey here as well.
I like them all.
He gets a good laugh out of all of them. He's here as well.
You have the two best nicknames for me so far.
I mean, how can you go wrong? No, first of all, Errol gave you the best nickname of all time by giving you Speedy Petey. That is the best nickname.
That's the
of
best
all time.
longevity, but is it really the best?
You're right. You know, I'm not going to argue with you with that. You could be right with that. But we have a lot to go over today, ladies and gentlemen, including that I haven't been able to touch anything upon this. Matt Rhule going to the Carolina Panthers. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about how I think that might pan out for the Carolina Panthers in a good way. So that's something we're going to keep our eye on. We're going to break down the NFC divisional games this weekend. NFC, not the AFC. AFC, we're going to stay till tomorrow. We're going to wait and hold off with that. We're going to do the NFC divisional games today as well. We're also going to be talking a little bit more about the New York Giants head coach, Joe Judge, and what he can do to help himself and help the New York Giants and fix the problem that is over there. So we're going to talk about that. And Speedy, what else do we have on the docket? A little bit of Tom Brady talk.
A little bit of Tom Brady.
See what's going to happen with him.
And a little bit of Mr. Judge.
Oh, Mr. Joe Judge.
Judgment Day.
It really still to this day makes me very upset that he's the head coach of the New York Football Giants. And there's nothing in this world that could change my mind.
It'll crave for some good headlines and puns, though.
It's nothing in this world is going to change my mind about Joe Judge because there's nothing anybody could do about Joe Judge. But let's get into it right now. Speedy, before I get into what I have to say, I know you're doing stuff over there, but I need you right now. What do you think of this Matt Rhule signing? And, like, who is Matt Rhule? Like, Matt Rhule, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know who he was a college football coach for Temple, Baylor. But there's a lot more to Matt Rhule, and this is why I think just possibly it might pan out for Carolina. But go ahead, Speedy.
Yeah, it's interesting because Matt Rhule, again, wasn't a primary coaching hire in terms of just ranking head coaching candidates for me. But I think the Carolina Panthers really needed something fresh, something new in terms of they have a young offense. They have a very college-type offense. You look at, obviously, Christian McCaffrey is phenomenal. He can play any offense. But DJ Moore, kind of that speed, scat-back type wide receiver. Curtis Samuel, kind of the same thing. He played running back at Ohio State at times. So he's that type of player. You've got an offense that's very shifting to the newer motion offense type game. You saw the Panthers really evolve from a power type offense to now this kind of motion quickness type offense. And I think they needed a younger coach like that. Like I said, Eric Bieniemy, I think, was the best option for Carolina, like he was the best option for the Giants. But they elected to go with Rhule. But I actually think that kind of team, it would work a lot better. And I actually think the Panthers needed that type of coach. I think the Panthers shouldn't have gone old school, because if they were going to go old school, they would have kept Ron Rivera. But they needed that new school coach, and I think Matt Rhule, among the college coaches, I think has the best chance of succeeding just with the way he built up that Baylor program. They were a 2-win team in 2016. They were, I think, 5-7 the year after, and now this year they were a top 10 team in the nation. So he knows how to rebuild a program, and he didn't have the luxury of recruiting like a lot of other coaches do in college, too. He really had to build up this program well, and that's going to help what is already a pretty good team for Carolina. They were 5-11 this year, but they're not a 5-11 team on paper. They were a talented team, but they'll help rebuild those other aspects of where they were weak. And I think it could work for Carolina. I really can. Again, I think Bieniemy would have been the better choice, but I think if there's any situation where Matt Rhule could succeed in the most, I think it would be the Carolina Panthers.
I, for one, love Matt Rule. I don't know if I would have been happy if he was, obviously after seeing everything that was going on with the coaching carousel. At first I didn't know if Matt Rule would have been the right guy for the New York Giants. I've said this over and over again. I don't know if he's the right guy for the New York Giants, but there is something that I do know about Matt Rule, and that man can coach. That's one thing for sure. And people who don't know who Matt Rule is, it's really quite simple about him. But as we all know, Matt Rule is now the head coach of the Carolina Panthers. He replaced Ron Rivera and interim coach Perry Fewell. Ron Rivera was the Panthers coach from 2011 to week 13 of this season when he got canned. He coached the Panthers to a Super Bowl during the 2015 season behind an MVP-type year of Cam Newton. But the Panthers, after that season, only had one winning season after that run. Frustrated with losing, the Panthers owner, Dave Tepper, decided that was it. He couldn't take any more of Ron Rivera. I don't know why, because it wasn't Ron Rivera's fault, but that's an argument for another day.
It's not his fault. It's just they wanted a more modern type offensive coach for a young team. It's a different type of team now for Carolina.
And that's true. It is a different type thing. But let's talk about it. What are 5 things that we need to know about Matt Rule? 5 things we need to know about Matt Rule. Well, he has sustained success. He's been in college football since 2013. He was first with Temple, and then he went to Baylor. In his first season with the Owls, he was had a 2-10 record. He improved to 6-6 the next season, narrowly missing out on a bowl game, which I don't understand how that happens, because I thought you only had to be 6-6 to get invited to a bowl game. Speedy, what's up with that? I thought that's what it was. You have to win 6 games. I thought
it was 2. That's weird. Okay.
Yeah, that
maybe they were 5-7.
Yeah, no, they were 6-6, 100%. But I don't know. Whatever.
Maybe there were too many 6-6 teams.
It's possible.
Enough bowls. I don't know.
And it's possible. In his third year, they went 10-3 before losing in the Boca Raton Bowl, and then in his final year at Temple, the Owls were 10-2, lost in the Military Bowl. But before those two 10-win seasons, the Owls hadn't had more than 9 since 1979 when they were independent. That's unbelievable what Matt Rule did over there. And then you look at what Matt Rule did at Baylor when he went into a program that was still dealing with fallout from the Art Briles scandal. Everyone knows what he did and going with everything there. I mean, in 2017, the Bears were an abysmal 1-11. Then he led the team to a 7-6 record in 2018, including a Texas Bowl victory. And then in 2019, Rule and the Bears finished 11-3, received a Sugar Bowl berth, but lost. How fitting. But we actually have a caller. Mm-hmm. This is Worldwide Sports Radio. Who am I speaking with?
Matt Rule is going to be an amazing NFL coach. Amazing. All you have to do with Matt Rule is look at the way he dresses. Hoodie with the sleeves cut off.
And not care. But that's because Bill Belichick does that.
I mean, look at all of the coaches that wear that look. They're all great.
Oh, man. I mean, look.
You know what kind of confidence you have to have a body like Matt Rule's and wear that look?
Listen, you're not wrong, but listen, just looking at this Matt Rule signing, I mean, do I think he's a better NFL coach than Ron Rivera? No. But do I think the athletes in the locker room and the coaching staff got sick of Ron Rivera? Absolutely. That's why he was canned. But I don't think that was the right move, but maybe it was. Well, we're going to have to see what Matt Rule can do, because, yes, he did have a very, very, very good sustaining success in the college game. Going to take nothing away from that. He does have a little bit of NFL experience. Yes, it was a brief stint with the New York Giants where he served as an assistant offensive line coach under Tom Coughlin. But he did coach guys like David Deal, Chris Snee, and Kevin Booth when the Giants' offensive line was pretty good in that era. But they went 9-7 and missed the playoffs. But again, it is what it is. At least he has some sort of NFL pedigree.
I mean, I just look at what he did in college, right? It's hard to make a basketball school good at football. And you know that there's basketball schools, like Alabama's a football school. Their basketball team stinks, right?
Yep.
Like, to take Temple and make them a football school.
A school that hasn't won more than 9 games since 1979 when they were an independent.
And then he took over a Baylor program, which, and I don't want to get into debating Baylor and whatever, but they were basically getting the death penalty for all of the things that they had, and they almost won the Big 12 championship this year.
Yeah.
I mean, and when you look at their styles, Temple, he was defense and pound the football, and Baylor, he played spread offense. He's not married to one style. He will fit the style of football for the athletes that he has on the team, which I think is an advantage. You know, when you get certain coaches, we're just going to run the hell out of the ball. You know, like certain coaches are married to certain styles. They don't know how to adapt. I don't feel like that's Matt Rule, and I think that gives him an advantage.
Agreed. And listen, the more and more I read up on Matt Rule, again, Jeff, you know I wasn't a big fan of Matt Rule coming to the New York Giants when that was talked about and that looked like it was all signed, sealed, and delivered. I wasn't a big fan of it. But after doing my due diligence...
Who was a big fan of it?
What?
Who was a big fan of it?
You said it was going to be a good hire. Listen, we could say it's a
Giants
good...
And Panthers
we could say it's a good hire right now. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a good hire in 3 years from now.
Did you see any of his press conference just now?
No, I'm in the studio. I don't have the TV in front of me.
Dude, I would run through a wall for that dude.
Really?
It was amazing. It was amazing. Because they went from the Matt Rule press conference, which was like inspiring and upbeat, and he was thanking everyone in the room and naming former players, Julius Peppers, Steve Smith, that kind of thing, and rallying everyone together. And then they literally switched over to the Mike McCarthy introductory press conference, and I swear to God, I thought I was at a funeral. And I'm not even kidding, because you know I like to bash the Cowboys, but that was literally the feeling in the room. It's literally 2 corpses up there with Steven and Jerry Jones and their brown teeth and everything, right? And then Mike McCarthy sitting in the middle. And I was like, this is a completely different vibe than what Matt Rule was throwing off just now.
Well,
I was inspired by Matt Rule's introductory.
I think Matt Rule was going for the Sean McVay approach. He wants to list everything that he knew about the Panthers and make it work.
Let's be honest. If you take the Matt Rule approach and go inspirational, or you take the Dallas approach and you go funeral, it's still better than the Adam Gase approach of crazy eyes.
Listen, Matt Rule on paper seems like the ideal fit for the Carolina Panthers. Obviously for your reasons, for his dress and everything. So
name me one coach that dresses like that isn't successful.
There's only one coach that dresses like that.
And that's my point. You got to be a fashion risk taker on the sidelines. Those that do it, they're successful.
Yeah.
Look at all the people that had fashion on the sidelines, right?
Yeah. But
Landry, with the hat.
But let me ask you, Jeff. Obviously, he's shown that he can turn teams around in the college game. Do you think that his game could possibly translate? Like, obviously, we were just talking about his offensive schemes, where he's gonna change his schemes to the players that he has. Okay, he's shown that he's not built into one scheme, and he lives and dies by that, like a lot of NFL coaches do. Do you think that he's going to be able to translate his college coaching to the NFL? Do you think his game is going to come over and be successful? Because there is talent on that roster. There is talent.
Yeah.
There is, and they probably have. And I don't think that there's a ton of debate about this. I think that the Panthers probably have the most interesting talent in the NFL, right? Like, I think Christian McCaffrey is, like, the most versatile. Like, he may not be the best running back, but he's a good running back. But he may not be the best receiver, but he's a really great receiver. Like, he's shifty. He does everything really, really, really well, where, like, I think he might be the most complete player in the NFL.
Could be.
He might be.
Oh, Christian McCaffrey, there's not a doubt in my mind. He very, very, very well could be with everything.
Right. So I think that you need to be fairly creative in which ways that you use him. And I think here's the only advantage that I give Matt Rule over almost any other coach in the NFL right now. he was just a college coach. He's been used to dealing with this younger generation of people that are coming up. How is and listen, I'm going to throw this guy's name out there, and I know Cowboys fans are going to get hurt, but how is Mike McCarthy going to relate better to these young kids than Matt Rule would?
Mm-hmm. No, I think Mike McCarthy, if he went to the Panthers, that would have been more of a mistake, because if you're just going to do a veteran coach, you might as well have just kept Ron Rivera.
Right, but I just mean any of these older coaches. I don't even care if you want to throw Belichick in there. He's the
no, I know.
Coach,
I think
Carroll. Like, Matt Rule is going to relate better to these a lot of these younger kids than any of this. I mean, look at all the good coaches. Yes, they're all older. Are these older coaches going to relate to this new generation of kids coming out? I think Matt Rule has a better understanding.
Right. The way the Panthers evolved their team the last 3 years, you knew they had to go in that direction with either a younger coordinator that was more of maybe had the modern type NFL, or a college coach like that.
I mean, I just think he's in a good position to maybe, keep things fresh and try something new. And because, I mean, let's face it, I'm not saying Ron Rivera wasn't a good coach, but there just becomes a point where that message becomes stale. And maybe that's why Carolina got rid of him. They wanted a new message. You can only say the same thing over and over again, and then players start to tune it out after a while.
I think it's still mostly the coaching style and the whatever Ron Rivera brought. Not that Ron Rivera wasn't a leader or anything like that, because he still was. He still was head coach, but the style of play that he implemented when he rebuilt that Panthers team was power and great defense and emphasis on running and front seven and stuff like that. Now it's kind of shifted where you have McCaffrey, Samuel, Moore, guys like that. It's more shifted to a modernized motion offense game, which, again, Ron Rivera still made the playoffs with that 1 year, but there comes a time where his fit, I don't think, was really there as much anymore, because he was a power identity, big receivers, Cam Newton type of guy, and especially with the defense too.
Well, that'll be his first big decision, right?
Yeah.
Will he keep Cam Newton?
Right. That'll be the
And there are rumors, and what he has said, it looks like he is going to keep Cam Newton on board, and it looks like he is going to be the starting quarterback come this 2020 season.
Now, that's fascinating, because I would have thought, college coach, you want to either, one, work with one of the young quarterbacks, or two, draft your own.
He obviously sees something in Cam Newton that he doesn't see in these other quarterbacks, Will Grier and Kyle Green or Allen, whatever his name is.
I mean, but is it really interesting? Like, is it all that interesting that he would go with Cam Newton? If you look what he was just doing at Baylor with Charlie Brewer, I think that the closest person to Charlie Brewer and what they could maybe do and take some of that Baylor offense to the NFL, the best guy that they have to do that would probably be Cam Newton. Charlie Brewer was a good runner and a good thrower. So, I mean, if Cam showed
people tend to forget that Cam Newton was the MVP 4 years ago. Like, he could still play at a high level. But I was just about to say that. Injuries have taken a toll, but if Cam Newton can stay healthy, the Carolina Panthers are going to be a problem in that NFC South.
No, you're right about that. I'm just thinking more of the perspective of he's a college coach with an all-young offense all at once. Is Cam Newton going to, one, buy into that himself? I don't think he wants to leave the Panthers. I don't think he ever had a problem with the team. I think it was, again, he was loyal to Ron Rivera. Would he still want to stay there or would he request the trade? And I think it's the same thing with Matt Rule. Is he going to want to have a veteran quarterback with all young team all at once? And then there's also the front office, too. Are they going to, because they've been rumored to ship out Cam Newton, too. Are they trying to be young all at once on offense? It's going to be an interesting question. You're right, Jeff. Charlie Brewer does have plenty of similarities to him. It's just going to be interesting to see if that's still the kind of approach that they were hiring Matt Rule for that reason kind of thing.
But also keep in mind, Matt Rule has been a hot ticket in the previous years that he besides this season. It's not like he hasn't been a hot ticket. The Jets wanted him bad last year.
Right, but
they wanted him bad last year. There was other teams that wanted him bad after the Temple, after what he did at Temple.
Right, but he was more of a dark horse candidate then. Now he was kind of more of a favorite. He was definitely going somewhere at this point.
Oh, right, but that happens with everybody.
Of course, exactly.
Get a couple of interviews first before you get the job, though. I mean, the same thing is kind of happening in a similar way with Matt Campbell. I don't know if you're familiar with Matt Campbell, but the same thing is kind of happening with him a little bit.
I don't really know who Matt Campbell is.
He's the head coach at Iowa State.
Oh, okay. Yes. Okay.
Oh yeah, he was the dark horse a little bit last year, but he was like a way out there.
Yeah, but
Dark horse.
But do you hear about him now this season? No. I mean, Matt Rule has been a consistent guy in the past few years, being a hot
Not
ticket.
really, just 2 years, right? Matt
Well, no. Apparently, in 2016, after his Temple, before he went to Baylor, there was a few teams that reached out to him. Apparently, they put quotation marks around reached out.
Right,
I don't know if it was for his availability or what it was for, but from what I've read and garnered is that a few NFL football teams have reached out to Matt Rule.
I heard the one that originally reached out to him was the Cleveland Browns. And the funny thing about it is, and this just shows you that Cleveland's going to be Cleveland, is that he didn't even want to interview with them. That he even turned down even interviewing with them.
I believe it with their dysfunction.
I don't blame him whatsoever.
Right, no, I agree, but, a lot of people that are in that position would at least just take the interview just to interview.
Of course.
It's a way to get your name out there.
Yeah, no. But it just shows what kind of cojones Matt Rule has by turning down things like that, because let's be real here. Look what he did look what he did with this. He tried to garner the 10 years, $60 million, or 7 years, $60 million with $10 million in incentives, and called the Giants and said, can you match this offer or do something better? Can you do something better than this offer? And once the New York Giants said no, he's like, okay, hung up the phone, and that was that. This guy has big cojones, and I think it's going to work out. And again, Jeff, you like the move. I wasn't a big fan of it at the beginning because I thought he was coming to the New York Giants, but more and more I read up and I do my due diligence on Matt Rule. I think he can be a successful head coach in the NFL. It's just how is he going to adapt from the college game to the NFL game? Because, Jeff, you know how I feel about stuff like that. There aren't a lot of college coaches that could come into the NFL and be successful. There's only one. He goes by the name of Pete Carroll. He's the only coach that you could really consider successful coming from the college ranks to the NFL ranks.
He coached in the NFL before that, too.
College. Yeah, but he didn't come
I know.
from college.
Listen, I know he coached earlier in his career in the NFL, but for his mainstay has been in the college game before he after his short stint in the NFL.
I mean, but he was a head coach in the NFL before.
And listen, I understand that. I do. But he was a longer tenured college coach than he was in the NFL.
And let's be honest, the real reason why he left college is why.
Oh, because USC was getting sanctions. Yeah,
on probation.
Of course, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, but let's be real here. Come on, Jeff. You and I know the college game. They all do stuff under the table. We're not stupid.
They certainly do, but even when you're bad at cheating, that's when you need to go.
Kind of like the Patriots. They're bad at cheating.
They're actually pretty.
I'm kidding. I know. They're actually pretty good at it. Yeah, I know. I'm kidding. They are actually pretty good at it. But yeah, listen, this Matt Rule situation right now for Carolina, I think is going to work out in the long run for him because he has sustained success wherever he has went. He's took bad teams and made them successful. But again, it scares me coming from the college rank to the NFL rank. It scares me a lot. It really does.
I mean, it's understandable. There aren't a lot of success stories, and I'm not saying that Matt Rule will be successful. I'm just saying that I like his approach. I like that he has a background of success. He has a track record of success, and I like his positivity. And God knows I love the outfit. It's just amazing.
Oh man! I mean, look, I give him a lot of credit with his outfit because I hate that outfit. I do. I really do hate that outfit. But I do give him a lot of credit. I mean, he has some cojones on him for being a college coach and pulling what he did, trying to leverage 2 offers and all that stuff. It didn't work out for him, but he still got the money and the stuff he wanted from Carolina. So, I mean, I give him a lot of credit.
That's what anyone in the world would do. If you got offered a job at Google and Apple called you and said, hey, I'll give you this, you'd go right back to Google and say, hey, can you match?
Oh, absolutely. But I don't know if I would do that as a college coach without any experience in the NFL. But it looks like that's the landscape it's becoming now, is that they're going after these nice offensive-minded college coaches.
Right, but that's an easy call to make once you already have the offer in your hand from Carolina, right? Like, it's the easy call. Like, what's the worst they're going to say? No? Okay, no. Well, I'll still take the money that's on the table then. Big deal.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, what's the worst they're going to do? Say no? Or even better, they might say yes, and then instead of, I don't know, $8.8 million a year, maybe you do get to 10 plus the guarantees.
Yeah, no, it's highly, highly possible, yeah. Well, the incentives, the $10 million incentives that he could get. I don't know what they are or whatnot. I have to do some more research on his contract, but I know he does have that 7 years, $60 million with a $10 million incentive bonuses all around.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he could, maybe he was just asking for the incentives to be guaranteed or something, But I mean, that's an easy call to make. He already had the offer, so he wasn't going to lose anything by making that phone call.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right.
I love it, though. I love it. I just love the hire. I love the enthusiasm. I love that he didn't go to the Jets, right? Like, I mean, it's just so great.
And listen, the Jets are a better organization right now than the New York Giants. And ladies and gentlemen, we are going to go to a quick break. Jeff, are you going to hang on? Because I'm getting into some Joe Judge stuff on what he needs to do to fix the Giants. If you would like to stay on. If not, we'll let you go.
No, I'm going to go. New year, no bees kind of thing.
All right.
I'm going to limit myself as long as Speedy can limit bees.
Well, Speedy's on the phone, so we'll see how that goes. Wait, my question to you is, did he ask you if you're a Cowboy fan? Because that's the new thing we're doing here on the phone.
He did not, but he needs to start asking. He knew who it was, though, because I
that's
called
true.
him an idiot.
Touche.
So
Touche.
He knew what it
All right,
was.
Speedy, I'm going to let that one go, Speedy. I'm going to let that one go.
But honestly, that dude yesterday, let's be honest, Matt. The 17th pick, he had it go in 3 different places. How does that happen?
I am not the person to ask that question.
These are the Cowboy fans. These are the Cowboy fans. This is the level of intelligence you're dealing with Cowboy fans. They shouldn't. Like, how do they have rights?
I don't know.
They're living amongst us like they're one of us, and they're not. They're savages. No Cowboys fans from now on.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right, Matty. Always good to talk to you, Speedy. You're a good man, friend.
Wow. No, you suck. Just you're a good man. Wow, I'm shocked.
You gotta build them up so you can break them back down again,
I can't wait. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was Jeff from Tampa calling in about Matt Rule and the Carolina hiring. He's liked Matt Rule for a very, very long time, so he was very positive for that situation. I'm still a little skeptical, but again,
that was the one place I thought it could have fit, though.
I agree. I definitely agree with that. I think he would have fit well with Cam Newton. I think he would have fit well with Daniel Jones. I'll be honest.
I'm still not convinced Cam Newton's hanging on there, but we'll see.
We will see. But ladies and gentlemen, we are going to go to a quick break, and when we come back from break, Joe Judge, New York Giants, what he needs to do to get the Giants back on track. We're going to get into that when we come back here at the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. You are listening to the Third and Long Show. And here's your hosts, Matty Caps and KT Hepburn.
631-300-4477 is the number to reach us here at the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. We are live again here in Hop Hog, New York. We are on Long Island, so it was a very, very cold, windy day here. But now, Speedy, we're going to get into it right now, ladies and gentlemen. Now, before I get into the NFL divisional games within the NFC, I am going to get into right now Joe Judge and how Joe Judge can fix the New York Giants. I'm going to break it down nice and easily. I'm going to give it 7 different ways that Joe Judge can fix the New York Giants, because let's be real here. Speedy, you can definitely attest and agree with me. The New York Giants need plenty of fixing.
Yeah.
That is one thing that cannot be denied. They need plenty of fixing from the ownership, from top to bottom, really, from coaching, from offense, defense, special teams, offensive line, defensive line, you name it. They need plenty of fixing, and we're going to get into that right now. And, Speedy, I want you to listen, because if you have anything to say, I want you to be able to chime in and whatnot. one of the main things for me that Joe Judge is going to need to do is it's simple. He's going to need to hire the right offensive coordinator for Daniel Jones. And if you ask any Giant fan what the most important factor in a potential turnaround is, and of everybody and their mother is going to say the development of Daniel Jones. And Speedy, even I've been saying that. I say I don't judge quarterbacks on their first year. I need to see improvement, a.k.a. development from this young quarterback.
Definitely. Now, I even admitted, and you and I both didn't like the pick of Daniel Jones, but I even admitted his skills were a little more than I expected in his first year. Obviously, you're right. It's tough to judge after 1 year, but I saw some improvement in terms of what I thought he would be. Now, you're right. The right offensive coordinator is going to be key. We have to see what kind of style is out there because we've seen young quarterbacks succeed in different types of styles so far, and it's not one trend that is running the league, really, besides the RPO stuff, but I think different types of quarterbacks are doing that anyway. Lamar Jackson's obviously doing it to the greatest extent this year, but we saw Josh Allen do it. We saw last year in Cleveland, Baker Mayfield do it to some extent in the second half. So different types of quarterbacks have been doing it. That's really the one constant, but as long as it's, like I said, a good fit either way, whether it's more of a throwing type, whether it's more of a running type, we'll see what kind of thing can happen with that, but they definitely do need that for sure.
That is one thing they need. They need the development of Daniel Jones going forward because that is the biggest thing that you could do. You ask any Giant fan, they're going to say the development of Daniel Jones, okay? Obviously, Daniel Jones, he did take a lot of heat. He turned over the football at a high rate, which is not uncommon, obviously, for rookie quarterbacks, okay? But he also became the only rookie quarterback in NFL history to throw for 350-plus yards with 5 touchdowns in a game. So, I mean, look, Judge's biggest decision will also likely be his first one, and it's going to be finding the right offensive coordinator to help develop Jones. And that needs to be his biggest prerogative. And I swear on my dad's grave, on my grandparents' grave, if the New York Giants really, really do interview Jason Garrett, I am going to absolutely come in here cursing up a storm, flipping the out, okay? Jason Garrett would be completely, utterly wrong for the New York Giants.
That'd be a worse hire than the head coach.
That would it would be the worst thing ever for that reason. And I would absolutely lose my mind if that was the case. If they decide to do that. And there are rumblings about that, and I pray to God they're not true. But again, there are a lot of negative things I can say about Shermer's tenure with the Giants. I mean, he just wasn't a good head coach, to be honest with you. I mean, you could say he did an excellent job with Jones's development, but at times, but again,
3 games or so. You're going to judge all that.
Yeah, no, but that's what I'm saying. I mean, the mechanics work for him. He did work with David Cutcliffe, who was at Duke, and obviously has high praise from the Manning brothers and the entire Manning family. But I mean, you look at it, Shermer made progress with Jones in 1 year. But Daniel Jones has a long way to go. And again, I'll even admit it because I still hate Daniel Jones's pick at number 6. I did see improvement almost every single game. From top to bottom, from when he first started to where he ended, you saw improvement of Daniel Jones, which is, as a Giant fan, which is something you want to see. But again, I don't know about you, Speedy, but I'm not sold on him just yet.
Daniel Jones?
Might be. Daniel Jones.
No, I didn't say I was sold on him. I said I saw improvements in his skill set that I thought was different than how I analyzed him as a prospect. He was better on the deep ball than I thought. He was better throwing on the run than I thought. Because I thought he was just...
Still bad, but better.
Yeah, I thought he was going to be just, all right, I can run on occasion and I have good speed for a quarterback, which, yeah, he does. But I didn't think his throwing on the run ability was that good. That was something I saw more with some of the quarterbacks last year. I didn't think he would be like that. Now, I still think he has to improve his outside game a little more. Obviously, reading defenses is a commonality with young quarterbacks, no matter who you are. And obviously blitz pickups, which is partially his fault, partially the offensive line. So judge that for yourself. I just saw some growth in his game that I didn't think he had initially just as a prospect. And that's more of what I think. I'm never going to defend the pick ever because I still think the Giants had to go with rebuilding just stronger positions that year. It wasn't really a quarterback draft. It was a defense draft. It was at the beginning, offensive line draft. So I thought they just had to rebuild those. But in terms of the actual quarterback, you have to give him a chance, especially since skill-wise he definitely grew.
Yeah, he definitely did. He definitely got better each and every week. And as a Giant fan, I who doesn't like the pick, I could agree with that. But again, in addition to finding an offensive coordinator with a track record for developing quarterbacks, which is not going to be easy, specifically from the footwork standpoint, because that's one of Daniel Jones' biggest problem. Everyone called me dumb when I said that. It's one of his biggest problem that he has is his footwork as a quarterback. The Giants need to find an offensive coordinator whose system features Daniel Jones' skill set the best. Okay? And you look what Shermer did. His system featured a lot of half-field, high-low reads, a lot of crossers with the wide receivers, zone reads, and RPO concepts that jive perfectly with Jones' ability to throw accurately in the short-term to intermediate range. But his ability to see the field and getting the ball out fast on deep routes was one of his biggest problems going forward. So that is also something you're going to keep an eye on with that for Daniel Jones, okay? But again, it's a huge position for the New York Giants, and it needs to be the number one position for the New York Giants. Now, you look at them now, Speedy, who do you think are the coordinators out there whose system meshes with Daniel Jones' skill set, okay? Who is out there? And if you want me to be honest with you, who I'm still on the fence about, what about Jay Gruden?
I don't know about that because I think Jay Gruden really wanted to shy away from those kinds of concepts. Remember, when Jay Gruden was coaching the Redskins, he was only there, I think, for a year with RG3, and RG3 regressed. So I don't know if he really likes to incorporate those concepts as much. I think Jay Gruden is more working with a traditional pocket passer type quarterback. Now, when he was in Cincinnati as an offensive coordinator, he had some success with good receivers there. You had that running back duo of the youngsters with Bernard and Hill when he got there, who did well at times. And I just think he's not that type of RPO coach that they really need. Daniel Jones is trying to get into that mold with a younger quarterback. I think Jay Gruden as an offensive coordinator would be more of a fit for a more traditional team. I don't think he would be fit for really an RPO. I think the RPO type coaches are going to probably be something like quarterback coaches or maybe even lower, not offensive coordinators that are low level necessarily, but probably a middle tier offensive coordinator or just a quarterback coach or an offensive coach on a team that has an RPO type coach.
So what coordinators do you think are out there? I can name one right now, Norv Turner.
Norv Turner's definitely one.
Joe Moorhead.
I feel like Matt Rule, it wouldn't surprise me if Matt Rule does decide to hang on to Norv Turner, though, just for experience.
Well, Norv Turner does have a proven track record with developing quarterbacks.
Right, and I feel like, especially if they do hang on to one of the younger quarterbacks, I feel like Matt Rule will still want some kind of level of experience. Remember, Sean McVay and Matt Nagy, when they were hired, they kept their veteran staff a lot of the time. They kept either if it was the defensive guys or if it was some of their offensive guys, they kept the older guys, and that has proven to work. I think Kyle Shanahan did the same thing with his, I want to say, receiver coach or quarterback coach or something like that when he came to the 49ers. So they're proving to hold on to that. So it wouldn't surprise me if Carolina hangs on to Norv Turner, but if he doesn't, yeah, I agree with you. That's the one name I could distinguishingly think of.
You want to know who else?
That has worked with RPO guys.
I like Joe Moorhead who worked at Penn State, who was a college coach. He wasn't very good as a head football coach, but he was the Penn State's offensive coordinator with Saquon Barkley in it, and he would immediately get the most from Saquon Barkley while utilizing a system that maximizes horizontal spacing, and the RPO game, which both fit Jones's athletic skill set. So I think Norv Turner and Joe Moorhead would be the answer for the New York Giants and the offensive coordinator. But there's also a guy that's not really talked about, Joe Brady.
Oh, okay.
Sean Payton's guy
Yep.
from the New Orleans
Yep.
Saints. I mean, he was an offensive staff member. He coordinated LSU's record-setting offense with Joe Burrow in 2019. I mean, you look what that did, and Brady's offensive mind would be a great fit for Daniel Jones' skill set. So those are three names to just keep in mind.
There was a coach with the Saints, too, that I think was getting a lot of head coaching offers last year. I'm trying to remember his name. I think he was either the receiver coach or the running back coach with the Saints. And I think for a couple games late in the season when the Saints already clinched a playoff spot, I think he was calling some plays. I forget his name off the top of my head. I wouldn't mind him either if you're judging an offensive coordinator, learning from Sean Payton, who maybe is the best offensive coach in football right now.
You're right. Best offensive coach, maybe, or best head coach, maybe.
Well, Bill Belichick's the best head coach.
Yeah.
I'm saying
Offensively.
from an strictly offensive standpoint, there might not be anyone better than Sean Payton.
Yeah, and you're 100% right. So that's just one of the things. Speedy, you give me one thing that Joe Judge can do, because he can hire an experienced defensive coordinator. He could lure a proven offensive line coach. He could trim the roster fat, which money in all that situation could be on the outs, and be able to spend willingly in the free agency of the 2020 draft.
That's definitely I think one big thing for me, just because it's a young team, it's a rebuilding team, one big thing I think will be connections with certain young players, because the Giants are right now in a rebuilding state. And when we're seeing now the last, I think, 2 years, really, maybe 3, players are more reluctant to leave if something goes wrong, and you can't have that kind of thing there. Now, part of that is going to have to be with the front office too, but if you don't get a good connection with some of the young players, they can request trades, they can hold out. You're seeing that more prominently. Obviously the players have to be good, but you're seeing that more often with players just be more of a quick leash. So if you have a bad relationship with those kinds of players, or if you do, again, something crazy, that kind of thing can happen where all of a sudden you could see, oh, here we go, Saquon Barkley holding out or requesting a trade just because you don't like what the culture you bring there or the connection you have with them. And that's the thing that concerns me. Obviously, I don't like the way they drafted a lot of the time. They had some good late-round picks last year, but outside of Saquon Barkley, there's really no obvious stars on this team. But with good young players, they can grow into stars, and maybe that's the case. And if they don't connect well with the coach, that could be an issue.
Well, that'll be a big issue if they can't get along
right,
with
in
the
terms
coach.
of hanging on to the players, because a lot of them, they have a lot of first-round picks, sure, but they also have a lot of guys that are good players that weren't first-round picks that are only on 4-year deals.
Yeah, listen, there's a lot of things he needs to do, but the main thing for me, again, is hire the right offensive coordinator, hire an experienced defensive coordinator, and to be honest with you, if you want me to hire a defensive coordinator and you know how much I hate the organization of the Cincinnati Bengals, I think Marvin Lewis would be a great defensive coordinator.
Let's see. I'm just trying to see because he's a 4-3, more of a physical type.
But it's his proven track record as a defensive coordinator.
I know that. I'm just trying to think if they have the talent to be not the talent, but the right type of players that would fit. His defense.
Or Wade Phillips.
Yeah, Wade Phillips.
I would love Wade
Phillips would definitely be more of the fit right now, I think, just because they have a lot of power rushing guys that could be 3-4 defensive ends. We saw Dexter Lawrence definitely flourish in that kind of role last year. He played, even though he's more of a traditional nose tackle, he actually played a lot of defensive end and did well as a pass rusher for a 3-4 end. So I think he could definitely fit. They still got Dalvin Tomlinson there if they don't trade him. They still got, who was it? B.J. Hill, who did all right as a 3-4 end. So they have guys that could definitely fit that kind of role. Now, the outside rushers, it'll be interesting to see how they find
Well, we could have had one in Josh Allen.
They could have had one in Josh Allen. It'll be if Wade Phillips is there, they're going to have to bring back somebody like Marcus Golden, and they're going to have to, again, get the corners to go with it, too. In Denver, they had more physical-type man-to-man corners, which I really don't see on this Giants team right now, and that's where the issues are going to lie. The Rams, he was kind of a zone concept, more softer coverage type corners, but They even had Talib, which was mutual to both the Broncos and the Rams, and now they obviously just traded for Jalen Ramsey, who could do everything. So it'll be interesting to see if they do bring in Wade Phillips, who's, I think, the best one right now in terms of a defensive mind. If not, he's second to Vic Fangio, who's now obviously head coach. But
yeah.
So they just need the players for it, and we'll see if they have it.
And we'll see how it pans out. That's one thing we're going to have to keep our eye on. Joe Judge has a lot of work to do as a New York Giants head football coach. That's one thing we could be in agreement on. And being New York Giants fans, it's not the popular pick. It's nothing. Nobody wanted him whatsoever. Anyone that's said, "Oh my God, we got Joe Judge. I'm so happy. I wanted him."
Well, right.
You're clearly an ignorant idiot.
Here's the thing. I did not like the hire by any stretch, but I'd rather have that than somebody who's already failed. Like, I'd rather have him than Josh McDaniels or something like that. Josh McDaniels already failed outside of New England, so I wouldn't want something like that. If you're going to go an unknown, I'd rather have that than a already failed guy that's already there. Again, my first choice would have been Ben-Enemy. Like I said many times, there's other defensive coordinators that were out there that I would have wanted. But again, inexperience is not negative experience, so who knows?
That's it. We'll have to wait and see. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to go to a quick break, and when we do come back from break, Speedy, this might be our last segment because we're going to break down the 2 NFC divisional games. We're going to get into that when we come back here at the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
You're listening to the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. You are listening to the Third and Long Show. And here's your hosts, Matty Caps and KT Hepburn.
1-631-300-4477 is the number to reach us here at the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. You got myself, Mr. Matty Caps, and my co-host, producer, good friend, confidant, my comrade, Mr. Speedy Petey in the house as well. Speedy, I love doing shows with you, man. It's great. We have a good chemistry here. It's a fantastic thing.
It is a classic. Always doing it.
But now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time. We're going to get into the NFC divisional games. We're going to break some of that stuff down going into this weekend.
You want any music for this? Or?
Yeah. You can play a little bit of music. Good call on that. Tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to break down the AFC divisional games, and we're going to do our Thursday pick'ems are back for the playoffs. And, we're going to maybe get into some NBA tomorrow as well. But
by the way, I was right about the bowl thing you were wondering about earlier. If there's too many 6-6 teams, they have to make some cuts. And I guess
really, and they were the ones, huh?
I guess Temple was one of them.
Really, that is something I didn't expect. That's very, very weird to me.
Because the 6-6 rule was also just put in place in 2010. You had to have a winning record before that.
Yeah. Oh, did you? It was only from 2010. You had to be 6-6.
2010, they allowed some 6-6 teams. I think if they didn't have enough, they allowed a couple 5-7 teams, which I know was a big heated topic right before the playoff format was in place. I think right around that time. So it was a couple 5-7s, but now you can be 6-6. But if there's too many 6-6 teams, some get booted out.
Wow,
which is interesting because they have a lot of bowl games.
That's shocking to me.
Yeah,
that's extremely shocking to me. But you know what? It is what it is. But Speedy, let's get into it right now. The first game we are going to get into, and the one game I want to get into, Vikings at the San Francisco 49ers. I think this game might be the game of the weekend, and I could honestly see an upset here.
I can see an upset too. I really think the Vikings.
Go ahead, Speedy. Take it first.
I think they have some good matchup advantages. Both teams can run the ball. Both teams can stop the run. It'll be an interesting strength-on-strength matchup. And here's the one thing a lot of people aren't considering. George Kittle is the best offensive weapon for the Niners, but Minnesota has good middle-of-the-field defense and good both man and zone coverage linebackers. Eric Kendricks has actually been one of the best in the league this year, performance-wise, in coverage. And that could be something they could use. They could use Harrison Smith. Anthony Barr has been outstanding in coverage, which, again, wasn't his specialty when he was out of the draft and even when he was a younger player. He's really grown into that, too. So, obviously, George Kittle's great, so you can't stop him completely, but I think the Vikings have the ability to contain him. And the only thing that concerns me with Minnesota is their offensive line. against that pass rush for San Francisco. If they can't block at all, it's going to be hard for them to win anything. But if they can get any just average level protection, I completely agree. They can pull off this upset.
There's a few things I want to say about this game. One of the things that is going to be in Minnesota's advantage, and this is something you didn't touch upon, which I'm glad you didn't, is they run the best play action pass offense in the playoffs that are left and almost within the entire NFL. And you want to know who has one of the worst play action defenses? The San Francisco 49ers.
A lot of young players on that defense.
This goes right into what Zimmer does as a head coach, and this goes right into what Kirk Cousins is going to do. But you want to know the X factors for this game, Speedy? Jimmy G and Kirk Cousins. Whoever outplays who wins this football game. That's what I'm going to say, because you want to know what? Jimmy Garoppolo has never played in the playoffs.
Nope.
Kirk Cousins has been in the playoffs, but he hasn't won. Oh, well,
just won last week.
Yeah, well, besides that, he won the big game last week. So, I mean, you look at it, and I talk about Jimmy G because he's making his first playoff start of his career, which hasn't worked out well for quarterbacks over the past 6 years. Since 2013, quarterbacks have gone 6-17 when they're making their first postseason start, including 1-2 this year alone, Speedy. The good news that San Francisco 49ers do have is that it might not matter if Garoppolo struggles, because they might not need him to throw the ball, because if they run the ball effectively, which they very well can do.
Right. I think they have right now coaching advantages with how well Kyle Shanahan has done with, besides Tevin Coleman and Kittle, really a lot of scrap heap offensive players. Raheem Mostert, who was he? He was one of the best running backs in the second half of the season. He was a special teams guy before that. Yeah, Matt Breida. You got these receivers, which are all small. They're all similar types, and they're using him to the best advantage. Deebo Samuel was a scat back type. You got Emmanuel Sanders, who a lot of people thought was done. He made him work. So that's going to be a big advantage. And how good will that quick game be against the Vikings pass rush and the Vikings, who play a lot of cover two?
But also keep in mind the Vikings pass rush this past weekend against the Saints was outstanding. If they do the same thing to Jimmy G and the San Francisco 49ers, they could easily win this game. Not even a close game. They could easily win this game. Right.
But I think Kyle Shanahan will be prepared with his kind of thing to be able to counter that. It'll be the one thing the Vikings will have to do is the same thing I said they did well in that Saints victory. Will they continue to move their pass rushers inside, because the tackles are the strongest point for the Niners, like they are for the Saints, of that offensive line, and the Niners offensive line in the middle is not great. So if they do that again, or even get guys like Linval Joseph going, and just the power rushing depth that they have inside, if they can get those guys going and really throw them off, that'll make a difference. And the other thing too is they're faster rushers and even their linebackers against screen passes. That's something that Mike Zimmer, if they wants to get an edge, will have to utilize that too. And he did a nice job of that too against the Saints. So it'll be interesting to see those mind games, how they play. But it's going to be tougher against a more quicker game offense for Minnesota to have the same level of overall pass rush.
It is going to be interesting to see how the pass rush goes for both sides of the football, for the San Francisco 49ers and Minnesota Vikings. Because, again, Minnesota was able to get to Drew Brees and make him uncomfortable throughout the entire game. And having Nick Bosa, Mr. Armstead was practicing today, so he's going to be back. Having these guys on the San Francisco 49ers defensive side of the ball getting to Kirk Cousins is going to be interesting. It's going to be the battle of the lines as well. Right. Besides the fact of the quarterbacks, it's going to be the battle of the lines, because, again, the Minnesota defensive line shocked me with how well they played last week. And if they could bring that same intensity to the San Francisco game, they're going to win. I really like them there. And then Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook looks like a new football player. He looks refreshed. He looks better than ever. I mean, and again, the Niners are vulnerable to surrendering points. Like, people don't realize that. They think the San Francisco 49ers are untouchable. They're very, very vulnerable to surrendering points.
Here's one of the things that's another interesting matchup to look at. Dalvin Cook running could be tough because the Niners do have a stout front seven, especially getting now Quan Alexander back and Dee Ford as well. They do have a very stout front seven and a tough run defense. But Dalvin Cook as a pass-catching back is something that could be very interesting, too, because they do like to blitz a lot. Robert Saleh.
Yeah, they like to bring the house, that's for sure.
Does like to rush a lot of outside linebackers. He does like to rush a lot of defensive backs. And that's something that's interesting that even despite having the great front four and even despite not blitzing all the time, but he does blitz creatively, that's something they can still expose if they could use Dalvin Cook on more sophisticated routes.
And one of my last points on why I really like the Minnesota Vikings, they're much better on both sides of the ball in the red zone. Their red zone offense and red zone defense are both better than the San Francisco 49ers.
That's interesting because that was always a problem for them for a while.
Yeah, but then you go look at the San Francisco 49ers. Well, what's in their advantage? Well, their strength of schedule and better record versus playoff teams. The rest that they just had after the Vikings played an OT game on Sunday. And that defense, man, you can't stop talking about Quan Alexander even though he's out.
No, he is officially out?
I think
I thought
so.
He was coming back. I thought they were bringing him back this week.
They say he's bringing him back, but we'll see what kind of Quan Alexander you're going to get from that. Dee Ford coming back on that defense. And again, I love Armstead. He's back. And you got to love Nick Bosa. He's more than likely going to win Defensive Player of the Year when it's all said and done. Rookie of the Year. Sorry. Defensive Rookie of the Year when it's all said and done. So that's basically breaking down. We just broke down the Minnesota Vikings San Francisco 49ers game. We touched base on some X factors, touched base on the line, we touched base on the quarterbacks. Now, Speedy, let's get into it. Green Bay Packers, Seattle Seahawks.
An interesting kryptonite of Aaron Rodgers in the past has been the Seattle Seahawks, but this team is very different. So it'll be definitely interesting. It's still Pete Carroll's defense. So that system has given Aaron Rodgers fits in the past. That defensive line for Seattle did a nice job against Philly. Now, granted, the Eagles were out 2 offensive linemen, so that doesn't help. But that pass rush was still effective. And it'll be interesting to see with the depth receivers for the Green Bay Packers, because Pete Carroll does like to take out the top receivers just schematically. Will those other guys step up for Green Bay will be a big question. Seattle's corners outside of Shaquille Griffin aren't great. But again, Green Bay's receivers outside of Devontae Adams are very streaky. So the good thing for them is one guy has stepped up at times, a lot of the time. So there was Lazard, there was a phase for him. It was Valdez-Scantling, there was a phase for him. Now, that's a good sign. So that sometimes it'll just take one guy. But Seattle's primary weakness defensively is against tight ends. And the Packers, will they utilize Jimmy Graham to the fullest extent? That'll be one thing to look out for. And then for their defense, outside rushing defenses tend to do well against rushing-type quarterbacks. How good will Russell Wilson be against that kind of pass rush? And will Seattle be able to run the ball inside? And that's the biggest weakness of the Green Bay defense. How good will Marshawn Lynch actually be? Because they're going to be utilizing him a lot. Marshawn Lynch has killed the Packers in the past. Will he be able to do it probably 4 years later and with all the injuries he's had?
Yeah, I mean, Marshawn Lynch, as soon as he came back anyway in that San Francisco finale, he still didn't look himself. He still looked a step slower. I mean, he still looked athletic for jumping for that touchdown. He looked pretty darn good. But you talk about the Green Bay Packers and Seattle Seahawks. They're going to meet in the divisional round this Sunday, January 12th. And the Packers come into the game as the NFC North Division champions. It's their first division title under Matt LaFleur, and their first since 2016. They finished with a 13-3 record, holding off the Vikings, who finished in second place by what the Vikings finished 10-6.
They were 10-6.
So they finished 3 games behind them.
But they were, I think, 1 game up as of their head-to-head matchup.
So
they were with them the whole way. And then Minnesota, I think, just rested starters week 17 anyway.
Yeah. Green Bay returned to the playoffs, after missing 2 straight seasons under Mike McCarthy, and Aaron Rodgers had an MVP-type season, which I said he was going to have this season. I said before that first Thursday night game, I said, watch out for Aaron Rodgers. He's going to have an MVP-type season. He threw for 4,000-plus yards, 26 touchdown passes.
And that was with 5 weeks without Devontae Adams,
yes.
too.
He got back into his groove, and he helped the Packers to where they are and currently at the top of the NFL. One person that's huge running back Aaron Jones emerged as a breakout star. Not just a star, a breakout star in the Packers offense. He rushed for 1,084 yards, 16 rushing touchdowns.
Which I think was second in terms of all overall scrimmage touchdowns, too. I think only Christian McCaffrey was ahead of him.
Which is nice to be in that kind of company, that's for sure. Devontae Adams was the team's leading receiver, 83 catches for 997 yards and 5 touchdowns. And like you just said, Speedy,
playing only 11 games.
Missed 5 games.
Right.
It's crazy. The Packers defense, which has always been their kryptonite, okay? They came to life this season. Linebacker Blake Martinez. Who the hell is Blake Martinez? He had 155 combined tackles and 3 sacks. Zadarius Smith had 13 and a half sacks, which is unbelievable.
That's what happens when you get playing time. He was on a good Ravens defense that he didn't get all the playing time.
Sometimes that's all you need is to get some playing time.
He was always a talented player.
Preston Smith had 12 sacks. Those 3 all have been key defensive players on this Green Bay Packers team. And they're going to play a huge part in getting to Seattle and making it tough for arguably the greatest quarterback in the NFL right now, Russell Wilson.
Now, the one thing that's interesting is because it is a similar type blitz-happy defense to what what Green Bay used to have when Dom Capers was the defensive coordinator and obviously McCarthy was the head coach. Will Mike Pettin be able to make it a little different so it's not as conventional? Because, again, from most general standpoint, the best chances of stopping mobile quarterbacks is an outside rushing defense, which, like you were saying, they have with the 2 Smiths. But, again, they had that before, too, with a very blitz-happy defense as well. Will they be able to make the changes to be able to do that and maybe contain Russell Wilson a little more? And the other thing, too, with their young corners, can they be able to keep up with those receivers deep? Seattle's got a lot of deep threat type receivers, and Russell Wilson can extend the play and throw the ball deep on very improvised, sophisticated routes, whatever it seems like at will. So can Green Bay's corners, which are very inexperienced, keep up with those kinds of guys, too?
It's going to be definitely very interesting to see. And now you talk about the Seattle Seahawks. The leader of the Seattle Seahawks offense is Russell Wilson. He had 4,110 passing yards, 31 touchdown passes. Again, in another MVP-type season. Tyler Lockett really came along this season. He helped develop him. And rookie DK Metcalf is one of the most talented wide receivers Russell Wilson ever had the privilege to work with. And
I'm still surprised he fit the way he did with Seattle.
And he's been outstanding.
I didn't think he could adjust to Seattle, a very complicated offense.
And all 3 of these guys were key in helping Seattle beat the Philadelphia Eagles in their wild card matchup. But you look at what DK Metcalf has done this season, coming in as a rookie. Obviously lucky enough to play with Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson took him under his wing and made him grow up right in front of our eyes. I'm trying to look right now. I want to see this because his statistics right now for him are probably unbelievable. Hey, I know Tyler Lockett is very good, but DK Metcalf, 58 receptions, 900 yards, 7 touchdown passes. That's pretty good for a rookie wide receiver if you're telling me. So he's only going to get better, which makes it scarier for the NFC and NFL as a whole. Because DK Metcalf is he's an absolute monster. He's a physical specimen. Okay? But he's outdoing what everybody thought he wasn't able to do. And I could not be happier for where he came from with that neck injury and not being able to play at Ole Miss his final season with that neck injury. Looking like a 120-pound little boy, and now he's a 245-pound machine. You look at it, though, Seattle did take a hit when they lost 3 running backs for the season, which will obviously tell you that they needed to go after Marshawn Lynch with the running backs that they lost. The Seahawks defense got 7 sacks against the Eagles in their win, but again, the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line is not very good to begin with.
Well, it's banged up. It's great when it's healthy.
When healthy.
It's all banged up.
But again, getting to Aaron Rodgers is going to be very, very difficult. They're going to need a healthier defensive end in Jadeveon Clowney, along with the leadership of linebackers Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright, who I love those 2 guys in the linebacker. Those guys are not talked about enough. KJ Wright and Bobby Wagner, they are very, very, very talented linebackers, those two.
And if they get Michael Kendricks back, too, that's a good third option as well.
Oh, yeah. That'll be a huge option if they're able to get him back. But again, moreover, the Packers are going to look to get some revenge on their NFC Championship matchup that happened in 2015, where the Seahawks outscored the Packers 15-6 in the final quarter and won in overtime. And of course, the Packers are surely going to have this game in their heads.
They can't let it get too far in their heads, otherwise they'll be making those similar mistakes.
So, Speedy, I'm going to ask you, X factors of this game.
I think one of the things is definitely the usage of Jimmy Graham for Green Bay, because I think Aaron Rodgers is still, again, not using him to the same extent, but remember, Matt LaFleur is a different type coach than Mike McCarthy. In Tennessee, he used the tight ends, and he used the running backs. He used the running backs as a pass-catching option. So it's a different type of offense than what Rodgers is used to. Will he be able to exploit that kind of matchup? And I believe Jimmy Graham, again, against Seattle, he's going to want to get those kinds of reps against his former team. He's going to want to do that to knock it out of the playoffs, too. So that's, I think, the biggest X factor on the Green Bay side. And for Seattle, I think it'll be Marshawn Lynch really as a whole, how much touches he's going to get, because that's the matchup they got to exploit inside with Green Bay. The Packers have a lot of talent on this defense, and one of the big weaknesses they have still is the defensive end position. Kenny Clark's a nice nose tackle. They got Blake Martinez, like you mentioned, who really improved as a whole as a linebacker. But Dean Lowry, Tyler Lancaster, their starting ends, they're not great. That's the matchup you got to exploit if you're Lynch, being just that power, bigger type running back that we need in the Bay. And I think the other one for the Seahawks is how they move their receivers around, because I think that's going to be a very big key. Can they get Metcalf on a smaller corner like Jair Alexander or Tramon Williams, rather than against Kevin King or somebody like Josh Jackson, who are bigger corners that could press the line of scrimmage? If you get Metcalf against those guys, he's going to have a lot of physical advantages. And then the same thing with Lockett. Can Lockett's strength is speed? Can they get him off somebody like Jair Alexander, who has speed that can keep up with him? That's going to be a very interesting matchup for them to exploit. And same thing with the Packers receivers. There's a lot of them are specialists too, besides Devontae Adams, who's great. Can they move those guys around and get the matchups? I think that's going to be a big key as a whole for both coaches, who can win those receiver corner matchups, because a lot of them are kind of the same level, but they're different types.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with DK Metcalf and like you said, the corners and how they handle the situation. You want to know where I think it's going to be won and lost again, Speedy, in this game as well? The quarterback situation. If people aren't excited to see these two quarterbacks go at each other head to head, then they obviously don't watch football and they don't understand the game of football, because having these two quarterbacks go at each other, and they're arguably, they could be 1-2, they could be 2-3 ranked NFL quarterbacks this season alone.
Right.
So having these guys go head to head, that is where the game's going to be won. Whoever has the better game out of these two quarterbacks is going to win the game, and it's going to be really. I could not be any more excited to watch this football game on Sunday, because these are two future Hall of Famers going at it.
These are the two teams with history, too.
Yeah, exactly. Going back to the 2015 NFC Championship, you know?
Right.
So having these guys go at it one-on-one is just going to be great. But again, the Packers have the more talented team, in my opinion, especially with especially with Seattle having the injured running backs, which Russell Wilson needs help at. But again, Russell Wilson and his magic, there's just something about him. I'm not going to say who I'm going to pick now, but there's just something about Russell Wilson that really tickles my fancy. I'm gonna leave it at that. But ladies and gentlemen, we just broke down the NFC divisional games. We talked about Joe Judge and what he needs to do to fix the New York Giants. We talked about Matt Rule a little bit going forward. But that's going to be it for our show right now. We are going to be back again tomorrow at 4:15 as we are going to break down the AFC divisional games. We are going to do our Thursday pick'ems, which Speedy and I always love to do. So we're going to get into that tomorrow as well. And I think maybe we're going to touch a little bit upon the NBA game. I want to talk about Mike Miller and the New York Knicks, because that is something that we really need to touch upon and what he's done.
He has a 500 record as coach right now.
Something that needs to be talked about, what he's done since he's taken over Dave Fizdale's job. So we're going to get into that on tomorrow, on Thursday. But ladies and gentlemen, that's it for our show here at the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
You're listening to the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.